Hi guys, welcome to another episode, and I actually have a show coming up this weekend, so I thought it'd be a good time to do my ultimate checklist for shows, event, craft fairs, anything under the moon. So this is the checklist that I use when I go to every single show, just to double check to make sure I brought everything I need. So I'm gonna share my checklist with you, and you'll also be able to download an Excel version file of this exact checklist in the description below. So be sure to check that out if you need it. So for those who don't know me, my name is Emily, and I run a small business called Emii Creations that sells merchandise made from my own art. So let's get started. I'll have the checklist on this side so you can reference along as we go. And I divided my checklist into three major categories, one being displays, and we got tools, and then basic necessities. The first one we're gonna get started with is my display checklist. Basically anything that's needed to set up your display or set up your booth, that kind of stuff. The first being tent and sidewalls. So depending on what kind of show you're going to, this specifically pertains to outdoor shows. If you're going to an outdoor show, make sure to find out if they have a tent available for you, because most outdoor shows, you're gonna have sun. It's probably gonna be good to have something to put over your merchandise and yourself and make sure you're out of the sun or wind or rain or anything that's gonna disturb you during the show. So if they don't have a tent there for you, I do recommend you getting one. For multi-day shows, I also recommend you getting sidewalls. So sidewalls are things that usually go onto all four sides of the tent, and you can zip it up to completely close your tent off. And this is great when you go home at night. You don't have to worry about wind, dust, even sometimes rain getting on your stuff overnight. And you can always close up a few of your sides if you're getting a lot of sun from one side or you're getting a lot of wind or rain. And I just get all my stuff from Easy Up, and I'll put a link in the description below of the things I got personally. And they have a bunch of options. There's other brands out there as well, whatever is best for you. I do recommend making sure your tent has fireproof cloth. Sometimes some shows will ask for fireproof cloth proof. Big companies like Easy Up will have it included on the fabric, so it's just going to be a little label on the fabric. You can always call them to double check and make sure that they have that certificate either sent to you or available for you in some ways. The next is weights. Weights is super important if you're bringing a tent, or even if they have a tent there, sometimes it's not weighted down and it can get really scary really fast, mostly if you are prone to wind areas. So weights come in multiple forms. I'll show you my weight, and I got the Easy Up weights that came with the tent setup. It has a little contraption to put it onto the legs of the tent and to strap it onto the leg of the tent, and it's built for that tent. So if you're getting a specific brand, I do recommend you getting the weights from the same brand just for consistency's sakes. But I do know there's a few, like even YouTube videos out there of weights that you can make at home. Usually they're sanded down. You can buy sand from Home Depot, so it's pretty easy to set up. I don't have my weights full of sand. I think I only filled them halfway, and they're still super heavy. So I bought one for all 4 feet. I have 4 weights, and I bring it to every show that I bring my tents to. Tables and chairs. I'll show you the 2 tables that I have. I have 2 sizes. I have a 6x2 and a 4x2, I believe. I don't remember exactly the sizes of them, but I'll put it below. And the tables are foldable tables, and they're super easy to fold and unfold. The smaller size, you can actually adjust the legs so they can go up and down, so you can actually make it higher. But I think the 6 feet table, you can't do that with. And they're very generic tables. You can find them on Amazon, or you can find them on most Home Depot, or those kind of stores will also have them. And I do recommend if finding out with your event to see if they supply tables. Some events do provide you like 1 table or something like that. Some just give you like a piece of land to set up with yourself. So make sure to find out if you have tables and chairs. And I have just generic fold out chairs. Some people bring like tall chairs, but definitely something that folds, and definitely make sure to remember to bring chairs because you're probably going to be there for several hours and you want to have somewhere to rest. Even if you do stand when you sell, it's always good to have a chair to rest during your break hours or your eating hours. The next is tablecloth. So it's always good to have something to cover your table with. Make sure it looks nice and spiffy. The best way to do it is make sure your tablecloth reaches the very end of your table so you don't see anything underneath. Mostly for me, I store a lot of things under my table, so I want to make sure no one sees anything under there. So you can buy something like this, like a very generic tablecloth from Amazon or from like a outdoor event place. You can get colors that match your brand, or make it fun, but be sure to get a tablecloth. One thing I notice a lot of people forget is, or don't do, but I like to do, is a nighttime cloth cover. This is specifically for multi-day events. If I am going home for the night, and even with my sidewalls, sometimes dust or things can still get in there. So I like having an option of a nighttime tablecloth, and I actually just use like a bed sheet. So I will bring because they're pretty cheap and you might have one that's used. So if you have like a little bed sheet, bed cover, bed whatever they're called, you can bring one with you, preferably a darker color so when it gets dirty it's not that noticeable, and make sure to wash it every time you come back from a show. But I also bring these to like indoor shows, if kind of like conventions like Anime Expo, Comic Cons. I will also bring these for overnight use. I'll just cover all my display stuff. It kind of discourages people from stealing or anything like that. Lights. So depending on what kind of show you're going to, again, you might need lights. I've actually had friends bring lights to indoor shows. Sometimes indoor shows don't have sufficient lighting setup, so that could be an option for you. Definitely for outdoor shows, it's really important to get lights. So indoor shows, you can probably just do like overhead lamp lights, like something from IKEA, very small, cute. And then if you don't have a plug or they don't provide power, I know some of my friends attach it to like portable power sources like this. But for outdoor events, it's definitely necessary, mostly if they don't provide lights for you. Sometimes they'll provide like one light bulb, but it's just not enough. So I always bring lights, even if they themselves provide lights for me. I'll bring at least 2. Usually I bring up to like 5 or 6. And I just put them in the corners of the tent. And this is kind of the light I bring to outdoor shows. They're clamp lights. They're super bright. There's actually a bigger version that you can get. I just got the smaller version because it works for me. And you can get these from Home Depot. They're probably called clamp lights. Or you can also get them from Amazon. And don't forget to get the light bulbs as well. Usually they don't come with the light bulbs. And the light bulbs we got, I think they're like daylight light bulbs. So they're like white light and it's really, really pretty. I like the white light better than like the yellowish light bulbs because it looks way better on art, which is what I sell. So here's the clamping functionality. And sometimes the clamps are really, really strong, but I do recommend I'll show you my zip ties that are on, but I do zip tie them after I clamp them. So I'll clamp them on like the tent and I'll zip tie down here. So if it shifts, it'll still be like locked onto the tent. Surge protector and extension cord. So also, it depends on your event, but sometimes they'll have an option of power. Sometimes you have to pay for power. Sometimes they just provide it to you with the booth. And if you don't have a power source or they don't provide one for you, but you still want power, you can get something like this, which is a portable power station. So I'll link this in the description below, and it has a plug. If I put 6 of my lights on there, it'll probably last like 6 hours. So it's really great. And it'll show you like how much power is in there. Just remember to charge it every single night. So regardless of if they provide power for you or if you have a plug yourself, your own power station, don't forget to bring surge protectors, something with a lot of plugs because you're gonna probably need it. And I have two options of extension cords. There's some indoor extension cords that have these like multi-plug options. So sometimes I'll have two lights in one particular area and it's easy to plug both of them in and then run the cord somewhere else. But this is only if you have a tent and you have a sidewall, because if these are not like waterproof necessarily. Or you can use outdoor extension cords, which is something like this. I use these if I'm not really sure if it's gonna get wet or not, or it has the option of getting wet. So I have these available. Also, I use like a combination of two. If it's inside the tent, underneath, like inside the sidewall, then I'll use the indoor options. If it's running outside or on the ground, I'll use these options just for safety. Ladders. So I bring a multitude of ladders depending on my show. Like usually they'll tell you if you have a like height setup, they'll usually tell you the limit of how high your display can go or something like that. So if you have a really high display, make sure to get a taller ladder. But for me, I usually bring my simple ladder. It helps me reach the top of my tent. So it's really, really important for people, mostly outdoor events. If you have something like a tent setup, you will want a ladder that allows you to reach the top of the tent. When I didn't have a ladder, I would be standing on my tables, which is really, really dangerous and really inconvenient. So definitely make sure you have and bring a ladder or some stepping mechanism with you. A cart or dolly. It's important to bring a cart or dolly because sometimes your parking space is not going to be near your booth space. Usually they have setup hours to tell you like, oh, you're allowed to set up or drive to your booth from this hour to this hour. If it's indoor, most likely you're not gonna be able to drive to your booth at all. Sometimes they'll have a setup where like the convention hall will have people to help you, but that's not always the case. So just always assume you're gonna have to be bringing your stuff a really long distance and you're gonna be safe regardless. And it would just be an added benefit if they do allow you to bring your stuff right up to your booth or help you bring your stuff right up to your booth. So I will always bring a cart or dolly. I have two options that I'll show you. One is a fold out dolly, kind of like smaller option if you don't have a lot of room, or if you are like, you have a lot of boxes, so you don't need the cart option. Nowadays, I usually bring the cart option because I found out the fold out dolly mechanism doesn't really work for me because I have a lot of like miscellaneous things that fly around. So it like the stacking thing can get really dangerous and it can fall. I've tried to put my tables on like the dolly setup and it's just really hard to move around. I rather put the tables on the cart and cart it somewhere. It actually works better. So I do recommend the cart over the dolly, but kind of up to you how much room you have available in your car or however you're bringing it to the event. For events you're flying to, obviously this is not as much as an option. In those cases, if you're flying to an event, you're probably gonna have suitcases anyways, so you're not gonna need really a dolly setup. And if you want to see how I do my suitcase setup or how I travel with 3 suitcases, I'll put a link to the video where I show my suitcase train. The next one is clamps. So what I mean by clamps is, if you're a convention goer, you might know what I'm talking about. So these are clamps. These are really, this is a heavy duty clamp. This is a small version. But how to use these? Okay, so I bring clamps for 2 reasons. If I'm going to an indoor show, I will actually put my setup on these clamps. There's like a very specific way we convention goers use them, but they're like really, really awesome. They like unhook and then you pump them to tighten them so you can get them really tight on the table. And then for outdoor shows, I sometimes use these as an extra protection against wind or displays falling. So if I think a display is not really secure, I will clamp this at the back of it, and it'll just stick up like this on the table. And then the display will lean against it. Sometimes I'll even like zip tie this display onto it so it doesn't lean back any further. I feel like a lot of displays, even like things that prop back like this, they're very prone to falling. Another way I use them is for outdoor shows specifically. I actually clamp my tablecloths down with the baby clamps. I find that mostly for outdoor events, if you get really windy, like your tablecloth is gonna like just go crazy. Mostly overnight, if you are putting away most of your stuff overnight and you only have a few items on the table, these clamps will prevent things from flying too far. And I just think it secures the tablecloth really well. A great option. I always just bring them just in case I need them. Banners and labels. So this is pretty self-explanatory, hopefully. Just banners with your logo. I sometimes put it in front of the table, sometimes put it in back on the tent, depending on kind of like the setup I'm doing at the moment. And labels is definitely, sometimes I forget these, I will admit. Labels is just pricing of all your merch. I usually put the pricing next to the merch and what the merch is. Sometimes people get confused like what it is. So for example, sometimes I have stickers on display and they're like, are these magnets? I'm like, oh, here's a label, it says stickers. So any display you need, obviously, make sure to bring them. Sometimes I'll have a separate checklist for just the displays I'm gonna use for this particular event. I didn't list out all my displays because it changes per event. And I definitely use different displays for different scenarios. But if you want, definitely, I do recommend making a checklist for that particular event. Sometimes I'll do a mock-up of the display and then like write a quick checklist of what I use for this particular event, so I make sure to bring it in my car the day before. Merch and samples. So definitely bring your merchandise. Definitely have a count of how much merchandise you're bringing, and samples are always good. If you are not putting your merch out there for them to grab, definitely remember to bring the samples that are out. Sometimes I only put samples out if mostly of things that I don't want to get dirty, or I don't want them touching so much, or just more delicate items. I will just put samples out for them to touch and interact with, and when they decide to buy it, I'll go back in my stock and actually bring the merch out later. So sometimes I forget to bring the samples. Definitely bring your business card. I actually have people ask me for my business card if I don't put it out myself on the tables. So people are used to asking and picking up business card, which is great. And so I'll bring like a whole stack. Let's see, for Vistaprint or something like that. Just bring a whole stack of them. I probably go through, I can almost go through 300 of them at a really busy show. So I actually bring extra more than I need just to make sure I have enough. And then any handouts you want, if you have a particular sale coming up, if you have like an event, another event coming up, you can always bring handouts to hand out to people, or anything like that. So the next section I'm gonna show off is the Toolbox Checklist. I bring a baby, I call it a toolbox, but it's really just my Doki Doki box. So I bring something like this. You can put it in any kind of box that or container that you want. Sometimes I'll actually even put things in like a jewelry box like this and just have some of my miscellaneous tools in them. I do have a notice that some of these items might not be good to travel with. Like for examples, I have scissors in there somewhere down the line, and those are probably not going to be good on a plane. So make sure to use your own discretion of whether or not it will be plane friendly, and remember to remove it if you are going on a plane. So safety pins. I have like a little baggie of safety pins, and these are for my tablecloths. So sometimes, mostly if you're getting a tablecloth that reaches the bottom of the table, and it's not molded for the table, you're gonna have like excess cloth. And sometimes I just like to safety pin it up so people don't find themselves stepping on it, trip on it. It just gets really dangerous if you have extra cloth flying around, mostly if it's like getting windy or getting dirty and stuff like that. Zip ties. I actually have a set of reusable zip ties. They look like this. I'll put a link in the description below. I get them from Amazon, and they actually they kind of like work like normal zip ties. They like snap on like this, so you can, they're pretty big though, that's the only downside. And then you can actually reuse them. So they unhook like that. There's like a little tabby for you to unhook them with, and I just think it's great because you use less, you like waste less plastic, and I just like the option of being able to reuse them. And they come in multiple of sizes, and I think they last for me on average 30 to 50 uses. So they last quite a while, but they do get worn out sometimes, like little tabby system stops working and stuff like that. A Sharpie or pen. I always have a Sharpie in there. I recommend Sharpie. I always bring a Sharpie, and I've had people ask me for Sharpies, mostly for artists. Like sometimes people like you signing things, and Sharpies are the best all-around way of signing anything that you can possibly sell. So also a pen, pencil, that's also a good option. Sometimes, for example, if I mislabel something or I'm changing the price mid-event, I have a Sharpie and I have like something to write on, and I can change. Oh, speaking of something to write on, the next one is something to write on. So the reason I do bring something to write on is there are cases like if I'm seeing like people are having a particular problem with something that is out there, like they're not understanding my signage, I could be like, oh, these are samples, do not pick up or something. Then I can just write it on and stick it out there. So that's like a great thing to have with you, just to have impromptu signs, which always seem to happen. Duct tape, or I just have generic tape like Scotch tape. Duct tape is great, Scotch tape is great, depending on what you're used to using. I use Scotch tape more than duct tape, but I feel like duct tape is better to have. I just don't usually use it. But it's just having tape on hand. You never know what's gonna break or fall down, so it's always great to have that as an option out there. Painter's tape is great to have too, because sometimes you want something that you can tape and remove without destroying whatever you're taping on. Mostly for displays, sometimes I want to stick signs on, and mostly when I'm sticking signs on, I don't want it to destroy if I painted the display, or if I have like something on display that I don't want coming off with the tape. I'll use painter's tape for that. So this is mainly to adhere my labels onto all my displays. Ruler tape. Now this is a special kind of tape. I'll link it in the description below. It's kind of like a tape, but it has like an inch ruler on there. And I found this amazingly great when I'm like setting up things where I'm really nitpicky about how far it needs to be spaced. So I don't have to keep pulling out my measuring tape. I can just use the ruler tape. I thought this was a really great addition. Speaking of measuring tape, it's always good to have a measuring tape. I always have these around. I can't describe how many times I needed them. One example scenario is some events, they have height limits for, if you're a convention goer, you're probably familiar with this. It's very important to make sure you're not going over any limits that they place on you. Scissors are always great. I've had multiple people ask me for scissors, but just remember, scissors are not good to take onto the plane. You probably put it under the plane if you want. Pliers. Oh, here it is. I actually bring pliers with me everywhere, and there's actually a really specific reason for them. So I told you about the zip ties before and how they can get somewhat kind of like broken. So sometimes when I'm trying to get these zip ties off, I have to like clamp them off like this. So this is why I have pliers, but I feel like pliers are great to have. Mostly if you're at an outdoor event and you have a like tent, I feel like there can be things that go wrong. So I always just have a plier. Hammer, this is kind of optional. Obviously don't bring it on a plane because that could be dangerous. But I don't bring this as much to my shows anymore, but I feel like sometimes it's good to have around. Well, I also used to have and bring kind of like these cube systems. I'll show in the corner of what they look like, but these hammers were originally to set up and break down those cube systems. So if you're interested in using that cubey system for any display, I know a lot of people utilize them at shows, outdoor and indoor shows. A hammer is a great way to set them up and break them down. So just a cool option. Just something I always have around are rubber bands. I use rubber bands for a lot of things. I use it to tie my merchandise together. I have a lot of them. I tie business cards together. Tie my hair. Like tie kind of like extra cords. So I have rubber bands for a lot of reasons like that. I just have a small stock of them that I bring with me to every single show, just in case anything needs tying. String or rope. I always have like just a little clump of string with me, and I have enough string that goes from one side of my tent to the other. So I find a lot of cases I use this one if things are attached to my tent that is like a display that is having issues staying in place. I'll add an extra string to tie just for protection against like wind issues. So for example, once I had a display with my prints and I had them in frames and they were wobbling a lot, and I was like, oh my god, it looks kind of dangerous. So I tied the top of the display to the back of my tent using two set of strings, these two guys, and it definitely prevented the wobbling from getting too severe, and it was a lot more secure. Travel scale. So this is this travel scale, and you can buy these from Amazon or probably even at like Home Depot or something like that. And they hook onto your suitcase, and you kind of like lift your suitcase up like this, and it'll give you the poundage of it. So the reason we have this, or I have this, is I travel a lot via plane. And for those who travel on planes, you do know that there are weight limits for your luggage. So this ensures you never surpass the weight limit, and they are very sticklers about weight limits. I've had people stop me at the check-in because my baggage was 1 pound over. So, and they made me open my bag and take stuff out and put it on my carry-on because it was too heavy. So definitely have one of these, and these aren't super accurate. So if you're weighing with these, make sure to give yourself like 1 or 2 pound breathing room. But yeah, great to have you have a traveling show or anything with luggage and planes involved. We finally got to the last section, survival essentials. So these are like things that I use to survive the long hours at a show. Battery pack portable power. So I have, I think on average 2 or 3 of these. They have a little USB plug-in thingy, and they come in all shapes and sizes. Some are cute, some are from like random free events. So I have a couple of these to charge my phone, charge my iPad, charge like my Square reader with. You never know what needs power. Something will always be lacking power at an event, and it's always great to have 2 to 3 of these at all times. Or if you are driving to a show and you have the space, these are awesome if you don't have a power source there. I know I mentioned this before, but I love these things. It is a specifically portable power station, power outdoors Jackery. So these are great, also a great option. Don't forget your charging cord. So this is probably just travel basics, good to know, need, have. Don't forget your phone chargers, don't forget your iPad charger cord. Don't don't forget your like square charger cord. I always seem to forget one or the other at events, so it has existed on my checklist forever now. Portable Wi-Fi. So I do have another video that goes through this more in depth of why and how I use this, but this is my portable Wi-Fi. It is from Verizon. You can get it from most providers like that. Wherever you are, you probably have your own provider that's great for that place. Basically a personal tiny hotspot, and it can attach probably like 6 devices on it. It does need to be charged pretty frequently if you're using it quite a lot. So bring these to attach these. But yeah, portable Wi-Fi, sometimes places charge you for Wi-Fi, sometimes places don't have Wi-Fi, and usually you need Wi-Fi to survive or charge people square stuff. So great to have, good option to bring with you. Calculator. So I actually bring a separate calculator. So I'm pretty dramatic and I bring this big calculator thingy, but it's kind of cute, right? You can always bring a smaller one, probably, because these are pretty big to put around, but definitely something that can charge solarly and separate from your phone. I'm always using my phone for something else for some reason, so it's really great to have a calculator on the side to calculate random like price stuff, like discount stuff, anything that needs to be calculated can be done here. Especially good if you, for some reason, all your devices go down and you need to calculate something. You still have a calculator with you. So nowadays, I always will recommend you getting a square reader, something like this. Probably the chip. I know the chip one is a little more expensive, or it does cost money, but I do like the chip readers. I think it provides more protection, and you can do tap to pay and all that good stuff. Square, if you're not getting the chip reader and you're only getting the swipey thing, I think it's free. So definitely make sure to get like a card reader functionality with you. There's a few options out there. You can get it from your bank, you can get Square, you can probably get PayPal too. So those are the 3 I know, but for reference, nowadays, probably like 50% of my sales is credit card, and I'm not really sure if they would still buy it if I was only taking cash. So I think nowadays more than ever, it's very important to have a Square reader. Definitely the tap to pay functionality of these little guys are an added benefit with COVID and people having concerns about touching things and all that. Fanny pack with extra change. Oh, where's my fanny pack? Please ignore the fact I have a billion keychains on my fanny pack. I don't recommend you doing that, but so this is what I use at events. It just goes around my waist and I have all my change in here. I bought it from Amazon. I actually have 2 of these because sometimes I have 2 events going at the same time. And I just have all my change in there. I put it on my waist. I find that a system that is physically on your body is the best, because I've heard of so many cases where people have things get stolen, whether it's like this little like box that they put their change in, or it's even just like an actual change box system. I've heard it get stolen. So I always try to have it on my body. So if they're gonna steal it from me, they're gonna like manhandle me at some point to steal it. And I kind of have a little system of how much change I bring to each show. So that's how much I bring to every single show in change. And I always just have that amount in my bag. So I start with that amount and I end with that amount. And this is specifically American dollars. For like other country, you should use your own judgment to convert based off what you think people use. Trash bags. I feel like people forget this a lot, but it's super important. I usually bring a tiny little bag with me, like either a regular trash bag or something, and I actually tie it to the side of my chair, and I'll just like shove like trash in there throughout the event. I always forget to only bring one and end up like not having a trash bag the next 3 days because I overfilled it the first day. So I recommend, like, if you have a 4-day show, bring 4 trash bags, that kind of thing. Tissue or like nappies, are these nappies? Sanitized wipes are really great nowadays. Tissue and sanitized wipes are both great. I usually bring like big heavy tissues and just fold it and put it in a bag. And then also bring the sanitizing wipe as an additional option. It's mostly for when I'm eating. I always manage to spill something. Or if other people are eating at your booth, they always manage to spill something. So you never know. Like that happens quite a bit. So you should always have some kind of tissue. Oh, hand sanitizer, hand wipes, that kind of dealio is always good to have. So hand sanitizers are always great to have because there's so many germs at shows. I cannot even describe to you. I used to get sick almost every other show just because people are like coughing on me. And so get the hand sanitizer going, mostly with like what's going on this past several years. Allergy meds, this is just like something personal I bring, but this kind of should cover any meds that you need. Make sure to bring. I always bring allergy meds because I'm prone to allergies. I'm allergic to the world and pollen and everything, so always good to have. And I personally think it's always good to have because your neighbors might need it too. Bottled water, hydro. I go to a lot of outdoor events and it can get really, really hot. So I do recommend you getting hydro with ice in it. So I always try to bring one hydro filled to the brim with ice because it's gonna melt, and additional water bottle or 2. I think the best case scenario for every single day, you have 2 to 3 water bottle sources. Just to make sure you're hydrated. You don't want to be unhydrated for whatever reason. Snacks and food. Since this is survival essentials, snacks and food is like something I probably really need for survival. You're probably there for a really, really long time, and it's always good to have something to snack on, to keep your sugar levels up, to make sure you're at the best you can be when you're interacting with customers, potential clients, and stuff like that. So I do recommend some snacking and fooding. Heating pad and blanket. I actually, for really, really cold events, I've had a few events that get freezing and I try to bring a blanket. So for indoor shows and some outdoor shows, I bring this little guy. This is actually a baby blanket, but it's like the perfect size to just put on your lap without being like overly in your way. So I like these. I probably bring one of my baby blankets with me to a show, and if it gets really, really cold and I'm at an outdoor show, I'll actually bring a heating pad with me. That's only if I have a power source, because usually heating pads you have to plug in. I've had people bring space heaters to events, but I don't really recommend that because space heaters take a lot of electricity, and you can you usually are capped at how much electricity you can use for your booth, and I can almost guarantee you that you're gonna go over your cap if you have a space heater. So a heating pad is a great alternative to that. There's a few heating pads out there that you can adjust the levels, keep it on for like a certain amount of time and stuff like that, and doesn't get too hot. So I'll probably link the one I have in the description below if you're interested in that and if you have cold events. So on the other side, for hot events, I definitely recommend a fan. So the event I go a lot to is the night markets here in California. And for those who know California, they know that it gets super, super hot here. So we always bring a fan to all of our night markets just to even just circulate air. Sometimes it's just blowing hot air at us, but it's just better than sitting in a stifling booth. So definitely if you're in a warm scenario, if you have a plug or if you have a power source, you can bring a fan with you. Seller's permit. This is just something you need, you know. Seller's permit is usually always needed. Do check with your state of regulations on whether or not you need seller permit. Usually every single event I've gone to, they ask for one, they ask for proof of one, and it's always good to have it at your booth as well in case they are checking there and then, and you don't want to be caught without it because they can ask you to leave. So definitely bring your seller's permit on your body. Sometimes they won't even look at it, but it's always just good to have. Each state has their own regulations of whether or not you need a seller permit, in which case scenario, if you're coming in the state. So check the specific state guidelines for example, California, we always do need one, and you probably need one for every different location you're at, and they have temporary seller's permit for people that are just doing pop-ups and stuff like that. So temporary seller permits are sometimes easier to get, but they sometimes are a different application process depending on state. I think I have a seller's permit. I have a permanent seller's permit for 3 different states, and I had temporary seller's permit for like 5 or 6. So yeah, I've gotten a lot of seller's permits. That's pretty normal. So definitely remember to get that. So I hope that was helpful. It definitely is a lot of stuff that I bring personally to my shows, and it might not be completely applicable to you, or only certain sections are applicable to you, depending on what kind of show you are going to, whether it's indoor, outdoor, craft fair, a wholesale, that kind of stuff. That all is going to determine which one is going to be important to you. But regardless of which event I'm going to, I'll actually pull and print out the full list, and I'll just cross out the ones that I don't need for this particular show. But I feel like it's always just good to keep in mind, like, just in case you need it, can I bring this? Can I not bring this? Do I need this for this particular show? It's always great to just like double check yourself, if that makes sense. Definitely, if you need this checklist in physical format, I have the Excel version of it below in the description. I hope that is super helpful to you as much as it has been for me. And if you are someone that has been going to conventions for a while, like, let me know what you think of the checklist, or if you want to add certain things that you particularly bring to all your shows, be sure to put it in the description below so we can all benefit from it. If you are new and are excited about a particular section or want more elaboration on a specific checklist section, feel free to let me know. I can make follow-up videos for you, or just we can have a one-on-one conversation in the description, or you can always reach out to me in other ways. All of this is great and you liked it, which I hope you did. Make sure to click subscribe, click the alert bell, and follow our channel for more great information. I will be having another video of setting up my booth at my upcoming 626 night market, which is an outdoor nighttime event. So you're gonna see like how I set up lights, how I set up my booth, how I set up my events, and how I prepare for the event in some of my vlogs as well. So I'm excited to share that with you. I hope to see you there. If it's out already, I'll definitely link it on the side. But otherwise, I will see you over there, and thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day and night.